And you did. Drove a 10-peg through his brain. Word of the Lord. Amen. The Bible is not a religious book, really, right? The things that happen in our story, it's a military excursion, is what it is. And I just came back from a week of Army training as a military chaplain, where we created religious support plans for stuff just like this, right? The troops gather, so you got to prepare them. As a chaplain, that means prepare them emotionally for what's yet to come. In the middle, you stand by them to, hey, keep your head up. I know it looks horrible, but we got to get through this. And afterwards, you provide them care when they see the 10-peg through the brain in the ground and how to deal with that. Impossible. Yet people have done it forever, and they continue to do it to this very day. But we got to walk through this military operation here a little bit. So we got the Israel army, which is foot soldiers, and the Canaanite army, which is chariots. Think of chariots as tanks of the ancient world, much stronger. And our little guys, not so strong. Eventually they clash, and they do that in the valley along the Kishon River. Now here's the good news. A river has water, and water tends to make the ground muddy. And you know who doesn't like mud? A chariot, because it gets stuck. So, the whole point of this operation is meet them by the river where they get stuck and you'll be fine. That's the plan here, and it worked. Why do we have such a story in our sacred book? We're a community of grace. Where's grace in this story? Why do we have to hear this story? It's disturbing, right? God's mission gets expressed in different ways at different times. It's about God's mission. And it's Women's Month, and we have that series on interesting, strong women in the Bible. And this is not only a story about a military mission, it's also a story about the one who led it, Deborah. What Deborah does is, and I want you to remember this term because that's the whole point of what I'm saying, Deborah operationalizes God's mission. God's mission is not just pie-in-the-sky dreams. God's will can be done on earth. It can be turned into an operation. We won't plan to drive 10 pegs through people's skulls, but we can follow up on what God wants on this earth. And we learn the levels of operations that are still used in today's military in this very chapter. Strategically speaking, at the top level, Deborah acts as king, because there weren't any kings yet. She's called a judge. She gives the direction. She's the boss. She's the commander-in-chief, if you will. On the opposing side, with the Canaanites, is King Jabin. So those two make the strategic decision, we're going to have us some war. And then they call in their generals. Deborah calls in Barak, and Jabin calls in Sisera, and they're in charge at the operational level. And then we go down to the tactical level, where you can touch stuff, tactical, right? And all of a sudden, we go back to female leadership, and the guys won't get the credit, because who wins the war? It's Jael, that woman that drives the 10-peg. Women start and win this war. The guys just play in the middle a little bit. And then we go back to the strategic result, because that's what the whole thing is about. Jabin, The Canaanite king, his rule falls apart after this devastating defeat. And through that, now it gets disturbing, God's mission is accomplished. Like we did last week, this is an age where things are simple. The good guys win, the bad guys lose. That's justice. That's how the world should be. It doesn't always work out that way, and it's never ever that easy. But stories like our superhero stories are like that. So what was God's mission then that was accomplished through this brutal excursion? It's a weird story, and we cannot really relate to a lot of those things that happen there. And I want to name all the disturbing things that stood out to me a little bit. It's really weird that they don't value peace over war. Because ideally we would want peace and not war. But somehow, in this situation, they knew that an unjust peace is more dangerous than throwing off oppression and evil. This is a world where peace does not come automatic. Sometimes it has to be earned through war. And then it's disturbing the job that Deborah has as a judge. We use the word judge in English, but it's not really just that because we think judicial. No. She has all the powers. She's the head of state, she's the judge, she's the military leader. There's no separation of power. There is no separation of church and state. She is it. She is the religious authority, the military authority, the judge, the ruler, the everything. Disturbing. Too much power in one hand, yet here we are. And then there is no distinction between male and female. The ultimate commander-in-chief power is a woman, without any trouble. The guys salute smartly, do their job. And eventually the job gets finished by another woman. Men don't rule here. Take note. Word of the Lord. Women rule. That's how it is. So alien, right? That's how good the world can be. So what's God's mission here? Well, the pattern in the age of the judges is that people break the commandments, God sends enemies, God helps God's people win over the enemies, and then the whole thing starts over again. We never learn. So the mission at that time was for God's people to treat people right. That's what keeping the law means. When you look at the Ten Commandments in Exodus, in one of the laws it says, so that your days may be long in the land of the Lord that the Lord is giving you. Be nice to people, otherwise you might lose your land. And if they don't, the enemies come, and you got to fight. Treat each other right. That's God's will for this. So how does Community of Grace operationalize that mission from God? The bottom line is to treat people right. And there are several ways in which I see this community operationalize that mission. God's commandment is clear: do not mistreat the alien residing among you. Well, America does that now. We mistreat the alien residing among us. And COG developed an operational plan to counter that through advocacy. And at the technical level, there's a whole handbook. Have you read it? When ICE comes through the door, there's a whole handbook of who does what. Who knows their place? Okay, the wrong people are in the room today. But there is a technical handbook on what to do then, okay? And I know where it is, so we can follow up on that. You have a good plan. God's commandment is also clear to feed the hungry. And again, at the operational level, COG partners with all the right local players who provide food assistance in our community. And technically, with your hands on, you do a lot of good stuff. And there's a whole complex schedule of sandwich making, burrito making, food distribution, the Congolese congregation, St. Vincent de Paul, VOA, all the places you do your food ministry. And then the rotation of sandwiches is the second Sunday of every other month. Burritos is the third Sunday of every month, which is, by the way, today, burrito making. So operationalizing God's will for this place means not driving 10 packs through brains today, but making burritos today, okay? God's commandment is also clear to protect creation. And at the operational level, COG got solar panels on the roof to fulfill that commandment through infrastructure. And then technically, I see you working on reducing, reusing, recycling, doing all the smart things one can do about that. And we don't do those things just because they're good. We do those things in order to operationalize God's mission. That's what the church is all about, to do God's will. Soon you will enter a period of mission study. I'm just a transitional pastor. So Hanson has his last Sunday next week, and I'll hang around until you find your interim. And with that interim, you will work on a mission study to remind yourselves why you're here and what you want to do going forward. What your mission is, and how you can respond to God's mission in this community, in this place. So, learning from the judges and their pattern of how things went then, I can't translate that into our situation. So Deborah's story is disturbing and Middle Eastern ancient story, but she can help us focus on mission. So in your mission study, you will work on following a pattern like God's commandments are broken, conflict ensues, people stand up for what's right, and God's people accomplish God's mission. You have a mission as Community of Grace. And you even have one posted on your website. Who can cite it by heart? What's the mission of this church again? I'll read it for you. Community of Grace is a family of faith made up of ordinary people from all walks of life, single, married, young, old, religious, spiritual, and of various races, gender identities, and sexual orientations. What brings us together is our desire to follow a path that Jesus walked. What keeps us together is the support and nurture that our members enjoy here. God is at work in this community, and all are welcome to experience this exciting adventure of faith with us. That's the mission you give yourself right now. Your response to God's mission. And today, Deborah challenges you to operationalize your mission. Again, strategically, following a path that Jesus walked is a great strategic directive. What will that look like? What will you do about it at the operational and tactical levels? And how exactly is God at work in this community? Or rephrased in the words of the Blues Brothers, when we put the band back together, We need to understand that we're on a mission from God. Oh no, I made a mistake. I closed with a guy quote. I can't do that. This story ends on women power again. Let's not forget that plot twist. Guys don't get the final word. Deborah called the job, and Jael finished the job. Amen.